paradox, and timelines. How paradox can better help one understand how time and reality works. A timeline can be understood as one complete path that reality takes as events unfold. It is a continuous sequence of moments shaped by conditions, choices, reactions, and probability. When something could reasonably happen in more than one way, reality does not collapse into a single outcome. Instead, it continues along multiple possible paths, each one fully taken and lived. Each path becomes its own unfolding story, like a fork in the road that continues forward and eventually creates more forks of its own. Different timelines are simply different versions of how life can progress. In one timeline, a choice is made. In another, it is not. In one, a relationship forms and deepens. In another, it dissolves earlier or never begins at all. These timelines do not exist far apart from one another. They run alongside each other, overlapping and influencing the field of possibility in subtle ways. Most people experience only one timeline because their awareness is focused on the version they are currently living. Much like listening to a single conversation in a crowded room, other conversations are happening at the same time, but attention is tuned to one channel. Some people, however, are more aware of neighboring timelines because their awareness is less rigid. They may experience strong intuition, vivid or meaningful dreams, a sense of having lived other versions of their life, or an ability to sense possibilities before they fully emerge. In grounded terms, this sensitivity is not about fantasy or constant control. It is an attunement to patterns, probabilities, and emotional echoes. Consciousness can lightly brush against nearby timelines and register information from them. This often shows up as impressions, subtle pulls, or a quiet sense of knowing, rather than clear images or certainty. Many people may have this sensitivity without ever realizing what it is. Not everyone, however, has access to this broader awareness. Some individuals are deeply anchored in a single framework of belief, method, or explanation. Their relationship to reality prioritizes consistency and certainty above flexibility. When beliefs are held as fixed and final, awareness has difficulty adapting. Information that contradicts what is already accepted tends to trigger resistance rather than curiosity. To understand timelines, one must first begin to understand and accept paradox. Accessing multiple timelines requires the ability to hold more than one valid explanation at the same time. Paradox means recognizing that two ideas can appear to contradict each other, while both remain true, depending on perspective, scale, or context. When someone believes reality must be singular, finite, and fully resolved, their growth naturally slows. They may become highly skilled within one system while remaining unable to move beyond it, creating a plateau where learning continues only in familiar directions. Moving beyond that plateau does not require rejecting structure, logic, or discipline. It happens through softening rather than force. It requires allowing reality to remain open-ended. For many people, this uncertainty feels uncomfortable or even frightening because humans tend to seek stability and closure. Yet, when a person becomes capable of saying that two seemingly opposing truths can coexist, awareness expands. In this state, different timelines become easier to sense, not as imagined alternatives, but as real patterns of cause and effect forming continuously around them. What some people call the Mandela effect is simply due to their sensitivity and ability to accept paradox. Most people do not notice when or how a timeline has shifted around them, and generally their mind cannot hold the paradox long enough to anchor the remembrance into their current timeline. In more resistant systems, some people may be so incapable of digesting the existence of paradox to the point of rearranging reality as a form of self-protection and self-preservation. Nothing can deviate from their original belief systems, and their system reads any change as an error to be ignored. However, the reality is that timelines are not errors, corrections, or mistakes. They are expressions of reality exploring itself through variation. Those who sense multiple timelines are not superior or more evolved. They are simply more flexible in how they relate to uncertainty. Paradox is not a failure of understanding. It is a sign that understanding has reached the edge of a larger structure. Paradox exists because reality is layered. What is true on one layer may appear false on another, and this can feel destabilizing for anyone who relies on rigid rules or absolute definitions. Accepting paradox does not mean abandoning structure. Structure and paradox are not opposites. Structure becomes adaptable rather than fixed, and the mind gradually loosens its attachment to what it believes structure must look like. As this flexibility develops, awareness becomes more capable of sensing timelines and probabilities as a living field rather than a single track. Practices such as meditation, reflection, and learning to sit with uncertainty can help cultivate this sensitivity, but only when approached gently. Timelines are not accessed by force. They are perceived through openness, patience, and a willingness to let reality remain larger than any one explanation. It is also important to understand that not every nervous system or psychological structure is wired to tolerate paradox in extreme or sustained ways, and that this is not a flaw. Some people function best when reality feels stable, singular, and clearly defined. Their sense of safety, coherence, and well-being depends on consistency rather than openness. For these individuals, being asked to hold multiple truths at once, or to question foundational assumptions about time and reality, can be overwhelming rather than enlightening. They should not be expected, pressured, or forced to engage with paradox, and doing so can actually be very destabilizing. In contrast, some people are naturally more sensitive to uncertainty and complexity. Their minds are less threatened by ambiguity, and their awareness can remain intact even when explanations conflict. This makes them more receptive to perceiving timelines, probabilities, and overlapping possibilities. Because paradox does not register as danger but as information, others may have little or no interest in timelines at all. Not because they lack intelligence or depth, but because their system is designed to protect itself by narrowing focus. For them, rejecting paradox and ignoring temporal complexity is a form of self-regulation. Their mind filters out what would otherwise create confusion, anxiety, or fragmentation. In this sense, a lack of sensitivity to timelines is not a failure to perceive, but a boundary that preserves psychological stability. Different systems are optimized for different ways of being in reality, and none of them are inherently wrong. This is why, even if someone personally finds it easy to understand time or paradox, it is best to respect the rigidity of others and not force them to change, as they are likely protecting their own psyche and will be ready to understand more on the subject in their own time and in their own way that works for them.